if you want to walk and step into 2026 as a more knowledgeable and happy person as a whole, you have to do this one thing first. Deal with negative people in your life. Deal with the challenging people that can put you up on the pedestal and test your emotions and test your patience. And today, I'm going to give you the exact 5-step process as to how you can do this. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to ask you a huge favor. If you can double check for me that you're subscribed and follow the show and rate this episode 5 stars if you're listening to it, that will do me a huge favor because it's what helps me keep growing my show and also bring better guests with better advices and better habits for you to incorporate your best life ever. And in return, I promise that I'll keep giving you Monday motivation with new guests, better lineups, and I just can't wait to see how you can improve your life. So that being said, on with the show. For the first time ever, I'm recording a solo bonus episode for the SMARTA Podcast, and I just can't wait to see how you can grow and get smarter with me. So it's December. It will soon be a new year. And every year you've got these cool, my favorite personal best is Mel Robbins coming up with these workbooks, make 2024, make 2025, and now make 2026 your best year ever. And each one of these planners has one thing in common, and that's pausing to reflect. And so my personal experience these past couple of weeks as I was finishing my school term as my last year before moving on to university, I discovered that I have to start learning to acknowledge and to accept the behavior of other people in my life. You are inevitably going to experience bad people come into your life, toxic people that will challenge your beliefs, your values. And so how do you deal with them? Because there isn't a certain formula. But I wanted to present you the 5-step framework that really helped me, that I discovered every single C-suite executive, every single CEO that came on my show, every single best-selling author reinforced that these things really do work for them. And I'm going to present you some actual tips they gave from the episode themselves. And if you want to listen to it more in depth, then you can definitely go ahead and click on the card to listen to the full episode. The first step in learning how to deal with negative or toxic people in your life is shift your perspective on their behavior. What do I mean by this? So there's 3 steps in order to achieve this bigger step overall as a whole. Dealing with negative people will happen in your work life, whether it's with coworkers or with your boss, or in your professional and personal life, or in your academic and personal life. So whether it's students, colleagues, or whether it's teachers and professors at university, you will encounter people that don't share your values and that will challenge you. So what you need to do is have this combination of internal mindset shifts, proactive communication, and firm boundaries. So the first step in shifting your perspective on their behavior is recognizing the personal context. 9 times out of 10, when a person treats you badly, it's because they're dealing with something themselves emotionally. Maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe they're going through a personal struggle that is making them react in a more hectic or chaotic way to you. So what often happens is they project their own negativity or their own emotions on you, but it's not personal. Maybe they just forgot how to deal with an emotion and you're just the person that they had to lash out onto. Number 2 is embrace human imperfection. What really helped me is episode 19 with Frank Sinclair, where he just described how you can view others with a lens of grace and how you can start accepting them and give them the benefit of the doubt when such things happen. And just pause, reflect, sigh, breathe, and realize that maybe that in that context, it's not because of something that you've done, but rather something that triggered their trauma or their personal experiences that made them lash out onto you. Number 3, and I learned this from Ron Kaufman, is avoid the blame trap. So you want to avoid slipping into this mood of resentment or cynicism and blaming others for your situation, because that's highly counterproductive and it actually stops you from being able to progress and move forward. So just as a summary, in order to shift your perspective on their behavior, you have to first do these 3 things. Recognize your personal context, embrace human imperfection, and avoid the blame trap. Now, the second step in this 5-step framework that I'm giving you today is manage your own energy and your own reactions. In the 23rd episode with Joel Zeff, he talks about controlling the controllables. When you're facing a challenging situation, you have to stop, pause, and reflect again, And just realize whether this is a situation that is out of your control, something that you cannot control, whether it's because of their own past or their own emotions, or whether it's something that is actually in your control, and whether you can choose to react in a more polite and thoughtful way. For instance, you can't control the personalities of other people, you can't control the visions of other people. And sometimes we ourselves let our expectations move over other people, which is what causes us to have those reactions, even though you might have step one already done. You might know that what the other person is saying isn't personal, but just because we've been triggered because it's something that is out of our control, we get to put our own emotions into the situation, which in turn just creates a bad argument. And when that communication issue arises, very easy to try to change the personalities of other people, to try to blame the other person. So you need to learn to only control the controllables. What you do have absolute control over is how you react in situations. I find this all the time. I can tell you right now, something that happens really often is when parents come home from groceries and they're just in that tired mentality of sitting in the car, buying everything, coming home, and then they have to do another thing. Take everything out of the bags, organize it in the fridge, in the storage rooms or whatever. And then a very common situation and scenario might be, don't just sit staring at me, come and help me unpack what I've bought. And then what can happen, because this is something personal to me, is you can just react, well, why are you in this angry or antsy mood situation? You can just slow down and say it nicely to me. You don't have to lash it out. And what helps the situation, I have found, is if you acknowledge their contribution, something that they've done. So thank you so much. I know you've done the groceries on your own, but can you please do this second part in peace? And in return, I will help you. I will give you a handout to, put them in the fridge so you can have the control over how you react to things. And likewise, it's going to happen in the classroom. Maybe the professor or lecturer you don't like teaches you something in a way that doesn't benefit your learning. That's not the way that you learn best. So what you have to learn to do is acknowledge that this is their way of teaching. Maybe it's not the best way for you, but it's something outside your control. If you have already tried to, tell them politely, look, this is the best way I learn. Could you adapt your lectures in this way? In high school, however, that didn't work. So you just have to learn how that person teaches and know what your best way of teaching is, and then try and combine the both. So unfortunately, you will have to take up more individual study and just be more present in class where you can notice the things or transform them in the way that you would usually learn best from them. Something also in the world of relationships that can affect the way you think or challenge the way you react to situations is if you're in a relationship and you're special and your partner, your special somebody, reacts in a situation completely different to the way you would react, don't let that be judgment. Don't let that change the way you view them, because they had different factors growing up that have influenced that way of thinking. Which leads me on to number 2, neutralize your energy vampires. Now, this is a concept coined by John R. Miles on our podcast together. And he has this opinion that people who constantly shoot down your ideas or discard your opinions and even drain your energy down only have that power if you give them permission. I'm a naturally very empathetic person, and I tend to really inherit other people's emotions. So if a person is really scared or anxious, I might get a little more agitated as well. Or if a person is very angry, I tend to become even more angry. And that's something that I've realized is a disadvantage when I'm trying to control my reactions to the way someone acts. And so what John said is use these energy vampires. And that's just a fancy way of saying don't give them permission to tell you how to react, to encourage you to react in a bad way that doesn't define you. And so you would release these energy vampires and refuse to give them that power of them dominating a situation. And by that, you allow yourself to be more rational, to understand the conversation, to understand where they're coming from, and to handle the situation a lot better, and ultimately just be a better communicator. Now, the third step in this second process of managing your energy and reactions is the buffalo attitude. So this is something that Ricardo Cabete really insists on and that he loves. He structures all of his keynotes based on the buffalo attitude. So to give you a little bit of context, there's two ways animals react when they face a storm or they see a storm about to approach them. There's a cow attitude and the buffalo attitude. And the cow attitude is basically just running away from the storm, which in this case could be just running away from a difficult situation or a person. In my experience and in my life, my mom has always been the one that, sees someone screaming at them and she just leaves the room before it can affect her. But that's not the best scenario. That's not the best option or situation you can choose. And why is that? Because when you're running away from the storm just eventually comes and catches up to you because you move along with the storm and you're just running away from it. But buffaloes have this attitude that you just run straight through it and towards it, because the storm, while it's coming at you, if you run through it, then you get out of it quickest. And so you charge the storm, or in this case, you tackle that situation and that issue, whether it's communicating or not, the quickest, to get through it faster, to get through it more efficiently. And then you're seeing the sun and it's peaceful, and you might inevitably have strengthened your bond or your relationship with that certain person because you haven't tried running away. You tackled the situation and you've shown high emotional intelligence. That leads me on to step number 3 in this 5-step process. We're just halfway done, so bear with me here. Number 3 is practice radical communication and accountability. I love this step, honestly, because it's very easy to acknowledge a person, especially if you've been friends with them for a while, or they're a teacher that you've known or that has taught you for a while, to understand where they're coming from, to know how to react to your emotions. But taking accountability, being a radical communicator, that's a more challenging step that really shakes some people off. So Case Kenny, who's this amazing mindfulness expert, has this idea of a face-to-face resolution. So when you're dealing with manipulation, or he has this sentence and this term, breadcrumbing, which is just being given just enough attention to keep you hooked, you must have an honest, direct conversation in order to compare those efforts and seek that alignment. Even if a negative scenario with a negative person or a toxic person affecting the way you communicate shows up, and you faced it like a buffalo, you ran straight through it, you didn't run away from it, and you tackled it, now's the time to have that honest conversation where you give your opinion and your comments for improvement politely in a way that they will answer. I love this so much because it just shows how much emotional intelligence you might have if you're able to determine the best way to reply to that person based on their personality, based on their way of growing up. Maybe, and Stephen Bartlett does this a lot with his guests. He researches them in his past, and he came up with this example once that coaches in NFL or in American football would treat every single player differently. And essentially, that's what you have to do with your relationships, whether they're professional, at work, coworkers, colleagues, or your friends, and even your romantic partners. Basically, this coach would come up and pat someone hard on the shoulder because they knew that that's what their grandpa used to do growing up, and so it reminds them where it came from. Or to another player, they would just need encouraging vocabulary and motivation to get them through the game, so they just go out there and have a pep talk to them that you can do it, you can still go through it. And that's what you need to learn to do with your own people in your circle of friends, in your circle of people. Learn what's the best way to communicate with them, and that just proves that you're an emotional, intelligent person, and you will get through dealing and accepting negative situation way better. Now, Dr. David Burkus also has this idea of respectful disagreement. And this is the second step in practicing radical communication and accountability. In order to come to a concrete resolution to an argument or to a scenario that is unpleasant or challenging. And that's very similar to high-performing teams where people always disagree and very frequently, but they do so in a respectful way, which is focusing strictly on the task, on the scenario, rather than resorting to those personal attacks. Bear in mind, When you're in a situation and someone comes up, or you're having to deal with a negative boss, a negative coworker, a negative colleague, a negative friend, you're often dealing with the way that person reacted based on their own situation, their own personal problems, their things they're overcoming, or their on or the very idea and notion of the situation. Maybe someone spilled coffee on you and they're lashing out at you. Maybe you're sitting next to someone in the airplane and and everyone's trying to help them out, to give them a better seat, to hang their coat up, to try and put their bags away, but they're just denying any form of help. And so not being a bystander and coming in and saying, "Hey, can I actually help you? Do you know that these people are trying to help you?" 9 times out of 10 can help them clarify and illuminate the actual situation of what's going on, because they might just be stuck in that whirled and chaotic sense of their own situations. Which brings me on to the last step of number 3, which is stopping the silence. Now, Elaine Lynn Herring, which is a lecturer at Harvard Law School, has this amazing book called Unlearning Silence. I 100% recommend it to you because silence in the face of uncertainty or bad behavior breeds fear. So to get to an effective and concrete resolution, you have to be the mature person that owns the narrative, whether you're a leader and colleague to that team, to that situation. You must own it. You must speak the truth to prevent false stories from running wild. A very, very common example of this is gossiping. Rumors in high school is basically all the talk that is happening, because people don't actually have the courage when this thing comes around to say, actually, that's not true. That's not what I know. This isn't vaguely what actually happened. This is what did happen. And so just having that accountability and stopping the silence really helps to get you out of such a situation. And people will also start respecting you more because they know you're not a person to mess with. You're not a person that falls in with a crowd. You are the leader. You're not the sheep or the herd. You're a wolf leading the pack. You're the buffalo that's sprinting right through the storm instead of running away from it. Now, the last 2 steps in this framework are recognizing the toxic environments that you're in and knowing when to leave, as well as dealing with negative bosses or leaders. So the 4th step, recognizing toxic environments and knowing when to leave, really comes down to these 3 things. Identify the bye-bye people, the ones that you have to say goodbye to. Number 2, maintaining your standards, standing up to your values. And number 3, authenticity as a filter. So let's talk about that. Number 1, identifying your bye-bye people, which is something that Joel Zuff talked about in his episode with me. People who are unhappy and don't care about the brand or team will eventually leave, whether it's from their own initiative or from the feedback from a couple of different other people. If you find yourself in a place without opportunity or positive support, it's a clear sign that you are in the wrong environment and you need to leave. What I love about this is that I've recently invested in Sahil Bloom's The 5 Types of Wealth Life Planner. And this has critically changed the way I see life, because especially as the end of the year comes by, it forces you to reflect and stop and think about he names it the worst misses and the biggest hits, and why those misses missed and why those hits hit. And I really like that idea because in the same way, you can apply it to situations and to people. So if you're in a room and you feel yourself always exhausted, whether it's in that workplace environment, whether it's your job, whether it's that classroom, when it's academically involved, it's a little more tough to say no and to leave that situation. But it is very easy to put a barrier and to say, these are my values, these are my standards, and I'm not letting the other person impact my emotions or my energy state, which is the 2nd step, maintaining your standards. Now, Jacob Carnes, in my episode with him, says that if a workplace culture or a leader violates your core values or is poisonous, then you should not feel obligated to stay. It all comes down to you are the only person that can change your life. You're the only person that can influence the choices that you make in life. It's very easy to go down the spiral in your further academic life, whether it's in university or even your career in your job, to stay in a toxic environment that actually affects and impacts your growth negatively, to say, I need to be in this environment to get that promotion and then everything's going to change. But the truth is, it won't. So, a very important mindset shift that you have to do is pausing and reflecting again to decide whether this is impacting you positively or negatively. And that might just be your sign to stay and appreciate and say a couple of thank you cards and said and spread your positivity around to those people, or your sign to leave and acknowledge that this is not the place for you. It might be for some other people, but for you particularly, it is just dragging you down and it's not meant to be. And now with Case Kenny, I have the last step of this fourth part in the 5-step framework, which is authenticity as a filter. Being your realest, most true, unapologetic self acts as a natural filter for the wrong people, while also acting as a magnet for those who align with your values. A very common example is whether you're starting a personal brand or social media in 2026, or you've already done so this year, you come across the question of how can you build a community? And you can tend to fall into the side of having to show yourself up very professionally on there. But the truth is, if you just show up as your authentic, natural self, with your humor, your curiosity, your typical characteristics and personalities that define who you are, you will inevitably find your people, find your community, and grow that sense of belonging with the certain people that share the same values, because you will find your people if you do what you love to do and what you're passionate about. So, we've come to the conclusion. The fifth step in the 5-step framework, which is dealing with negative bosses or leaders. So the question is asked now, what is the cost of strict management? This is something that, again, Dr. David Burkus shared in my episode with him. And it's all around the idea that leaders who manage through fear or bite everyone's head off may gain short-term compliance, but will ultimately face complacency and a lack of genuine fellowship. So I'm going to mix the ideas of two people now that I've interviewed previously on my show. And those are Barry Posner and Andrew Bryant, which was the first guest ever on the show. And Andrew Bryant has this idea of self-leadership, that in order to lead others, you must first learn how to lead yourself. And Barry Posner says to be a great leader, you need to inspire others rather than create followers. So you must think about the long-term effects and consequences of what it is that you're doing. Number 2 is the impact of micromanagement. So Erin Meyer is the co-author of the amazing book, No Rules, Rules, with the CEO and co-founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings. And she has this idea of radical candor. And it's all around the idea that the best and most high-performing teams are the ones that manage people at a very broad and vague level in order to let those creative people be full of innovation and creativity, in order to let innovation grow and flourish. And micromanaging, on the other hand, often stifles that creativity or room to grow and causes team to spend even more time finger pointing, blaming, and even more discussions arising, because you're essentially bossing people around how to do their own work in your way instead of their way of working most efficiently and best. And so a very important trait of high performing teams and leaders that have made it far and are full of success is learning how to let people do their job and trusting them with your own values and tasks and to-do lists. Finally, Dane Walker, the founder of Rivel, has this idea of accountability over insecurity. If you're a leader, you must realize that if you attract B or C type players, which are essentially just negative or underperforming people, it may be a reflection of your own leadership style or brand. So maybe the reason why you're having so many conflicts or having so many situationships, and I'm just putting it out there for a couple of people, is because you yourself have been spending a lot of your time dedicated to negative situations, negative things. So maybe if you're a person that usually tends to complain or gossip a lot, and you ask yourself, well, Sonia, how can I deal with negative people? I always find myself in these disagreements, arguments, situations that are just challenging my patience, and I don't know how much I can last. Well, obviously, you're only attracting the type of energy that you put out there. So it's very important, especially as we're right at the very end of the year, to invest or get yourself, because these are all free, some sort of planners with questions that can help you reflect on the type of person that you are, the way you led your year, and just realize whether at the end of the day, you're a person that spends a lot of their time happy and positive and optimistic, or whether you're that type of person that tends to lean into the more negative side. And maybe then you can reflect on the situations that are most common in your life. So those were the 5 steps. Shift your perspective on their behavior, manage your own energy and reactions, practice radical counter and accountability, recognize toxic environments and know when to leave, and finally, dealing with negative bosses or leaders. So if you've enjoyed this episode and you've made it this far into it, then definitely double check that you're subscribed to this channel, follow the podcast, and rate this episode podcast 5 stars, because it's what keeps helping us bring amazing leaders and amazing guests on that share these amazing tips that I can then share with you to help you create the life of your dreams. I'm going to wish you the happiest of holidays, and I wish you a very calm, productive, and amazing holiday season. And just leave away with this one thought. To get yourself, I personally love Mel Robbins, make this your best year ever planner, that you take these questions that make you think and reflect on how you spent your year, because even dedicating 15 minutes, 60 minutes, 1 hour to this sort of purposeful work can help you be a better coworker, be a better colleague, show up as a better boss or as a better founder in 2026. So I'm Sonia Marta. Thank you absolutely so much for listening to the first ever bonus episode here on the SMARTA Podcast. And I can't wait to see you next Monday. If no one tell you this today, I want to be the first to tell you that I believe in your ability to create the life of your dreams. Thank you so much for being here and wanting to grow SMARTA together.